Welcome to Claim Your Space. I'm Anita, and this is a channel where we talk with women from different walks of life. Today we talk with Vanaja, a therapist based in Bangalore, India. In her conversation with me, Vanaja highlights the importance of healing relationships, and this is not something that I've given much thought to before. But after she brought it up, it struck a chord in me, and I started realizing that healing relationships are actually very crucial for our success and our achievement in life. What do we mean by healing relationships? These are relationships that give us an increased zest and vitality for life. They make us feel good about ourselves. They give us more clarity about who we are and a sense of self-worth. Of course, we can see that these kind of relationships are intimately connected with emotional and physical health, and they are extremely important for women. So, in listening to this conversation with Vanaja, I encourage you to think more about healing relationships and let us be intentional about cultivating healing relationships that will take us far in life. Dr. Vanaja Nair is the founder of the Institute of Relational Therapy. She has a doctorate in counseling and psychotherapy and has counseled numerous clients over 20 years. She also teaches and trains others to become therapists. A mother of 3 children, she takes us on her journey. Join me for this conversation with Vanaja.
Trauma and woundedness happens to us in a relationship. We get hurt in relation to another person, right? Uh, like we say that he broke my heart or she
Right.
broke my heart, or my mother didn't do enough for me, or my father was very critical, and the
Right.
pain we carry of it. So that trauma happens in a relationship. Uh, So I think healing can also take place only in a relationship.
Okay.
If we move away, if
Hmm.
we abstain ourselves from actually connecting with another human being,
Hmm.
we may be able to protect ourselves.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I'm not so sure whether we'll be able to heal alone.
But Vanaja, tell me one thing, and we've been friends for so many years. I don't want to say exactly how many years because it's a long time. We were friends since college, but I know that practicing therapy was not your always your calling. It's something you came to after a point of time, right? Initially, you were looking at literature, maybe teaching. Can you take us a little bit through how did you come to where you are today through this?
Yeah, well, I think that question would requires almost an hour of therapy with you.
With me.
Yeah.
Or is it because I was with you and you needed therapy, so you went into this profession? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, no, it's been really helpful to have you as my friend. And yes, I was doing literature, and I love literature still.
Mm,
I read a lot, very invested in English literature.
mm,
Uh, and I was teaching English literature when I was working in Bombay. Um, I think one is, to be very honest with you, I found that the number of students who would take up English literature had reduced drastically,
mm, mm,
and I was teaching some really profound works like D.H. Lawrence's Sons and Lovers or Eliot's Wasteland
mm,
to just a group of 4 or 5 students at that time in that particular academic year. Um, I I didn't feel that gratification of engagement with
mm.
enthusiastic
Right.
group of students, who are
Mm,
all passionate about literature.
yeah. yeah. They didn't do
Uh,
justice to the literature. Yeah, I understand.
yeah, and it was also the time, like, I think now it's been almost 3 decades. It was also the time when people are moving more and more into software
Right,
engineers.
right. Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
There was an attraction of what would like really be financially also viable as a
Right, right.
career.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, one of the reasons. The second was, of course, I found that I could connect well with my students,
Hmm.
um, and they usually like to come and talk to me,
Hmm.
confide in me what's
Hmm.
happening, and I really like being with human beings, actually,
Hmm.
to be
Hmm.
honest. Like, if you recollect, even during our college days, we used to go to these NGOs, we used to go to
Yeah.
this old age home. You
Yeah.
remember?
Yeah.
And this home for, you know, um orphaned girls, I
Orphanage.
think,
Yeah, the
almost,
orphanage.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's an orphanage. And something about those experiences gave
Hmm.
me a sense of purpose in my life.
Hmm. 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 Right.
Um, so I think all those factors came together.
Hmm.
Um, so when I shifted to Bangalore, like, the last settlement
Hmm.
from all the traveling that I was doing,
Right,
I
right.
thought this was a good opportunity to shift into the field of counseling and psychotherapy.
Your book, you describe that, finding your niche even within therapy what took time. It wasn't that it happened immediately. And as you write in your book, how, it took you time to arrive in the circle, as you put it. So can you tell me a little bit about how did you find your place within the role of therapy?
I think it was a fairly long journey.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
I did my training initially in counseling from Parivartan,
Hmm.
uh, which is a very well established NGO in Bangalore that is
Hmm.
into training and offering counseling services.
Right.
And in those days, offered one of the uh, really robust training programs in
Hmm.
counseling.
Hmm. Hmm.
The focus was a lot on the personal awareness of the therapist. There was a requirement that we ourselves, all the trainees had to be in therapy
Hmm.
ourselves,
Hmm. Hmm.
and our work was supervised by
Right.
seniors in the field.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, a pretty strenuous process,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that helped me to look at myself, my own frailties, my own woundedness as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it kind of set me on a path. And then after that, as I continued with my education further and I started working in the field and started doing my PhD, I found that the way I was working or practicing
Mm-hmm.
was different in my experience. Let me
Mm-hmm.
say that. In my experience, it was different from what I saw, what was generally happening
Right, right.
uh, in the field of counseling and therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think my work with my clients were long term therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So I have worked with clients for um, anywhere between 40 sessions to 400 500 sessions,
Wow.
um, and sometimes when I would meet colleagues in a conference, a national level conference, meet clinical
Mm.
psychologists or other professionals in the field,
Right,
mental
right.
health professionals. Occasionally, I would get this weird look, and I would be asked this question: "What are you doing for so long with your clients?"
Can't you fix them yet?
Yes, it only requires 5-10 sessions, and if not, I'm encouraging dependency.
Okay.
And I mean, given my personality, I started questioning myself. I thought maybe I'm not a good therapist. Maybe I'm
Okay.
really bad at what I do. And I kind of started avoiding going to these spaces. So my feedback to myself depended a lot on my relationship with my supervisors because I continued with my supervisions by choice even after I finished my training.
Okay.
And my supervisor would often tell me that it's okay, like, I'm doing good work and I don't have to um, believe in what other people say, or that my way of working is different and other mental health professionals, their way of working is different, and it's okay. Like, it's okay for me to trust myself. And I also then started looking at places after my doctorate where I could continue to grow as a therapist, probably develop a sense of faith in myself as a professional, um, the way I work.
Right, right.
Um, and that's when I found out about the Pacific Gestalt Institute in LA. And when I read some of the articles written by Lynn Jacobs, who's a co-founder of PGI, and Gary Onterf and many others in the field, I really felt I could connect with what they were writing about relational work
Right.
and how therapy, it's not a time constrained um, event where a cure happens and that's it, it's done. You fix somebody and it's done. Uh, there was a focus on the developing relationship and how that acts as a healing agent. And I thought, wow, somebody else is out there in this world who kind of thinks a little like me.
Yeah.
So then I wrote to Lynn and asked for whether I could join one of their retreats, residential retreats, and I went for that. And that's what I meant when I said finding my tribe. So ironically, it was in another country with a, almost a purely white uh, population, like all the participants were Americans mostly, uh, that I kind of, felt at home.
Always had this idea that somehow therapy means, like you said, clinical. It's the therapist is objective, kind of stands behind or maybe somewhere on top, looking down and kind of analyzing us, telling us what's wrong with us, fixing us. And that's why even I suppose people hesitate to go for therapy also, because it's seen as, but you've turned this, and not just you, but the whole field of relation therapy has turned this on its head. And I think you're making an important contribution in India. You're one of maybe the few who practice it, or one of the few who's writing about it. And I just want to read something from what you sent me, a sentence where it says, by an author in this field, every intervention, every moment of therapy is not only a technical event, but also a moment of interpersonal contact. And I think that sentence captured to me kind of the essence of the way that you practice your therapy. So could you just maybe highlight in terms of how is the relation therapy that you practice different from other practices? We're not criticizing other practices, but I just want to know, like, how does yours differ from what you see? You've talked about it a little bit, but are there other ways? Okay, the time frame that you communicate with the clients, but are there other aspects that make the way that you do therapy different from others?
What I can talk about it is my own subjectivity, my own way of how I
Yes.
practice. I, the person you just quoted, I think it is Gary Yonter, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken,
correct, correct.
one of my mentors from PGI. Um, yeah, kind of moving when I hear him talk, when you read out what he said,
Yes, the sentence,
familiar,
touched me as well.
powerful,
Yes.
yeah, powerful. Um, see, Anita, I can say one thing
Hmm.
about the way I work. That is, I don't do any kind of behavioral interventions or behavior modifications.
Okay. Hmm.
I trust that my client knows what is good for him and her,
Hmm.
and often she or he has a better idea of what they want from life, what is causing them distress,
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, than I will ever have.
Okay.
Or even if I have something like an extraordinary sense into what's happening for my client, um, the only way I can see whether that is accurate is by
Hmm.
in dialogue with my client.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
cannot analyze my client and say, I think this is what's happening to you, and this is based on my knowledge and understanding of people, or
Hmm.
my
Hmm.
because I've studied psychology, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
I have to really be in contact with my client to check in, like, hey, how does this sound to you?
Hmm.
Um, and focus more on how my client experiences me. What are the things that is helpful for him or her? What are the
Hmm.
things I may say and do unknowingly that's hurtful?
Hmm.
Even like you said, the experience of coming to therapy, I think it's a very culturally, it can be a very shaming experience
Yeah. Yeah.
because we are taught to be self sufficient,
Hmm.
fix our problems, right?
Hmm. Yes.
Um, be independent, like and we shouldn't talk about our problems to an outsider or
Hmm.
outside the
Hmm.
family.
Yes.
Yeah?
Hmm.
And if we are upset, we are anxious, we cry or we get angry or we are stressed, we don't know how to cope with our work or our
Hmm.
relationships, it's seen as a gap which we need to fix by ourselves,
Right. Yeah.
and it's a weakness if we are not able to.
Hmm.
So already when I walk into that room to see my therapist,
Hmm.
I'm already feeling really bad about myself, right?
Yeah.
That this is something I couldn't fix.
Hmm.
It's a sign of my weakness, and I need somebody stronger to help me fix it. Now, if I'm not able to see that vulnerability in my client as a therapist
Hmm.
and not connect with that vulnerable space,
Hmm.
then there is no contact that's possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so, yes, I think my focus is more on the relationship that emerges between me and my client.
Hmm.
Um, whether I come across to him as human and as vulnerable as he is,
Hmm. Hmm.
not somebody who knows everything, like you said, who sits with these qualifications and degrees out there and is
Hmm.
now um, passing a diagnosis
Hmm.
or an assessment
Hmm.
to the
Hmm.
client and saying, this is the problem, this is
Hmm.
what you need to fix it.
Right. A little bit about what's the book about and what inspired you to write this book.
Well, it's about relational gestalt therapy with groups. Uh, I've been running therapy groups and support groups for the last decade and a half, and thought it is high time to
Hmm.
write something, contribute to the gap in literature that we have in India,
Right.
especially working with groups.
Hmm.
So we depend a lot on the writings available from the
Mm-hmm.
Western countries, and I thought it'll be good to look at how we can use those concepts within an Indian cultural context.
What
Last
kind of,
question was
let's say there's a person who wants to get into this field, and I know that you also, help people to, enter this field. So, like, what kind of skills and what kind of personality you think is required in order to get into this field?
I think probably first and foremost a mindset of uh, that I'm as human as the other person,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to a mindset of um, I'm here to help other people in pain.
Mm. Okay.
Because this latter one comes from already a position of that others need my help,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which makes me a far more better person, right? If other people need my help, then I'm already on a superior space
Mm-hmm.
of who's figured it out.
Right.
So I think that probably primarily maybe something we would require as a person when we join this field. But invariably, often I have found it with many students and trainees where they start off with this position of
Mm.
I want to help others in pain.
Mm.
There are so many people out there who are suffering and
Mm.
all that.
Mm.
It's a good thing. It's a
Right,
good thing.
right.
I'm not saying it's wrong.
Mm.
It's just that we often then tend to forget how much help we need,
Right.
primarily,
Yeah.
first,
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
we can be of use to somebody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that in that context, the way I'm talking about my kind of work, relational therapy, uh, which falls into the humanistic school of
Mm.
psychotherapy,
Mm.
the focus is on the therapist, on the self of the therapist.
Right.
So it requires a lot of personal reflection, awareness work, one's own personal therapy. Yeah. So this annual residential retreat that I've been running for some years now,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it's something many of my trainees asked me to do. I
Mm.
was running groups for NGOs and religious institutions, government organizations
Right, right.
before that. Um, and then my trainees asked me if I would run a group therapy for them. So I said,
Mm.
yeah, why not? Let's give it a shot.
Mm.
And we started off, and the first time they all came, they were all so excited, and they thought, oh, music, fun, retreat, like let's carry some drink and like snacks and all that. And I think by the end of the day, one of the retreatists, when they realized the seriousness of group therapy
Mm.
and working on their personal issues in a
Yeah.
group setting,
Mm. Mm.
and by the time they left, by the end of that retreat, they were all very serious and sobered down and very introspective.
Mm.
Um, However, they've come back, of course.
Mm.
We we call it the de-shame camp, like a
Mm.
camp where de-shame, like
Nice, nice. We all need
construct.
that.
Yeah. So, so it's a place we go somewhere outside Bangalore and we stay
Mm.
there for 4 5 days.
Mm.
It's a mixture of, I think, both pain and fun and connecting
Mm.
experience.
Mm.
So on the long drive, we are singing or we are sharing stories and
Mm.
listening to some really weird music that's happening in Bollywood nowadays, you know. And then we get serious. We get down to doing some work there, individual pieces of work, group work,
Mm.
group process, dynamics. Yeah, it's it's been very rewarding actually, Anita, because uh, despite it containing this element of personal reflection, working
Hmm.
on one's own personal pain
Hmm.
in front of other members, you
Right,
know,
right.
um, actually the trainees look forward to it. I think it's yoga has been very helpful for me to not just physically stay fit, but also mentally, emotionally. Mm. Just the practice on a daily basis
Hmm.
brings a deep feeling of being grounded
Hmm.
and mindful of what's happening to us in this moment.
Right, right.
Um, Other than that, like you mentioned, journaling, um, writing about things that disturb me or trouble me in a day, or sometimes something hurts me about a relationship or something that's happened, or even things which I don't know, like I'm feeling in a low mood and I decide, okay, let me just write what's
Yeah.
happening to me, get in touch with myself, right? So just writing
Hmm.
about how I'm feeling, what's happening to me at a bodily level,
Right.
what am I experiencing, uh, and sustaining that and staying with that, even if it's the unknown, just to stay with it
Hmm.
uh, without judging, without trying to push it aside, without pretending that that's not how I'm feeling.
Hmm.
So, flowing with the joy and cheerfulness,
Hmm.
and flowing with the uh, fears and anxieties and
Hmm.
frustrations of daily living as human
Hmm.
beings.
Really busy. I mean, you've got these retreats that you do, you've got your personal practice that you do, your writing that you do, and you have three children, plus you take care of your mom. So, every woman struggles with this. So how do you balance all this? And you always look like a superwoman to us. So how do you do it, Vanaja? How do you manage to do everything?
Yeah. Well, you know that I have a great aversion to that superwoman label. Um, uh, yeah, I think I just probably just often take each day as it comes.
Okay.
Um, and children are now, at least the older two are adults now. They manage
Right.
mostly by themselves.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I would say that it has been challenging. I
Hmm.
want, it's been very challenging to raise the kids, educate myself,
Hmm.
um, and be caring of my aging parents.
Hmm.
Um, but it's been worth it. Uh, I love my kids, and they've grown up to be pretty good, sensitive human beings,
Yes.
and it's been very healing for me to be around
Hmm.
my parents and reconnect and re-establish broken bonds,
Hmm.
or strained. I won't
Hmm.
say broken because I was always in contact with them,
Hmm.
but the strains that we have
Yeah.
with our parents,
Right. Right.
the unavoidable conflicts and all that.
Hmm.
I have had a lot of support
Hmm.
in terms of my like where my work is concerned. I've been in
Yeah.
touch with my supervisors
Hmm.
throughout all these years.
Okay.
I consult them when I'm feeling doubtful about my work.
Hmm. Hmm.
um, my personal therapist, whom initially I was on a weekly basis seeing her,
Hmm.
and that is the first 3 4 years.
Hmm.
And lately, whenever I feel something is like really heavy and burdensome, And then I have you. Then I have a few very close friends.
Right.
Um, my parents, like dad, when he was alive, he would do things for me. My mom is can be quite nurturing and supportive, and
Yes, yes, for sure.
um, yeah. And I think when my partner, when he's down, when he is in town, he does
Yeah.
help out in all the ways that he can. And fortunately, also for me, he has been very encouraging of my academic and
Yeah.
pursuits.
Yeah.
Um, my career has never stopped me from doing what I want to do, or discouraged me in any way. My closest, I mean, you are one of my closest friends, and it's been very heartwarming to have a friend who's not from the field,
Mm-hmm.
you know, where there is so much of shared history before work happened for either of us, that we meet at a very even, equal page. That when I'm in pain or something really bothers me, I can turn to you, uh, because that's what we did when we were in college and we continue
Yeah.
to do. And you turn to me, and this profession doesn't come in between as a wall,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I think in some ways that in itself is healing, Anita, to not have our external facades or positions or um, whatever, achievements or whatever it is,
Right.
that comes in the way of human relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Just admire the work that you do, and I know, like, it's not been an easy path. It's not been like
Yes,
you've
yeah.
just been able to wake up and do all this great work. You've struggled. You do continue to struggle, and I just admire what you've done, and that's why I wanted to talk to you about it.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah,
somehow we think, yes, I can get over this hurt that I had by sitting by myself, reflecting on it, thinking through logically. But what you're saying is, actually, we need relationships in order to get over this hurt.
yes,
So I
yeah.
think,
And healing
yeah,
relationships.
and healing relationships. Yeah.